Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the last session of the day. I'm sure all of you enjoyed the previous sessions and had a lot of takeaways. But we promise that this session is going to be as exciting and interesting for all of you. Our session is titled World-Class E-Commerce Fulfillment Centers, a New Reality in India. So when I got this topic from CII, I thought to myself, is this a question or a statement of fact? And at the end of this session, each of you can decide whether it's a question or a statement. I would repeat it. World-class e-commerce fulfillment centers, a new reality in India. So to help you decide whether it's a reality, whether it's a question or a statement, we have an esteemed set of panelists who represent a spectrum of industries: e-commerce, infrastructure, FMCG, apparel, and of course, supply chain solutions. That's the industry that I represent. I'll just quickly introduce myself and then we can get introduced to the panel. My name is Manu Bhalla and I'm the Director and Global Head for Contract Logistics and Supply Chain for Freight Systems, a Dubai headquartered company with operations in 20 countries. And in India, we have 19 locations. We are a mid-sized company with a group turnover of $500 million. And in India, we're at about 500 crores. We are a complete solutions company and provide international freight forwarding, supply chain management, and so on. And to support the supply chain needs of our clients, we have built world-class intelligent warehouses and distribution centers to help them, serve e-commerce as well as automotive, FMCG, apparel, and other industries. In Dubai, we have recently launched FSL Shop Easy, an e-commerce company, basically to enable brands to go overseas. So we are registered seller as FSL Shop Easy on Amazon and Noon in UAE, and somewhere in the near future, we hope to bring it to India. I will now request my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. And I would like to first go to Bala. So Bala, over to you.
Hey all, good evening. My name is Bala Murugan. I've been in supply chain for the last 20 years, designing and implementing large distribution centers. Currently, I'm leading the automation function in Flipkart, where we design and implement new and interesting technology interventions in the supply chain processes.
Thank you, Bala. Over to Ashish.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Ashish Pandey. I'm President Nestle in India. So I've been with supply chain for 25 years, worked in various links of supply chain across various geographies. And now from last 5 years, I head supply chain for South Asia region. Very excited to be part of this panel and interacting with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Ane.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think like Manu said, I think it's a big challenge. Last session of the day on a Friday, but we'll try and make it as interactive. So my name is Anay Shukla. I head the Logistics Infra Solutions division at Logos. Logos is basically a real estate developer focusing on warehousing asset class, and with presence of over 8 to 9 countries across the Southeast. Logos has its journey in India, which is about 3-4 years old now. We are developing large-scale warehousing parks across India, currently primarily in Chennai, Bangalore, and NCR, and with more locations to go. Personally, I have been a supply chain enthusiast. I've worked in supply chain for the last about 18 odd years now, worked across industries, right from automotive to 3PL industries, automation, and now into a real estate side. So trying to really see the different facets within the supply chain. So look forward to interacting with you and having a very, very fruitful and powerful session.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. Savarth, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarvarth, and I head the supply chain and customer experience for Snapdeal. I've been working for supply chain for more than 16 years now, and exactly half of my career has been with high-tech manufacturing and product development, and the other half of my career has been in logistics and distribution. I and Bala have worked together in the past, so I was part of the core team that was responsible for building eCart. So yes, in my previous avatar, I had done work on eCart, first mile, middle mile, and warehousing. And right now I'm looking at how we can kind of create a similar experience, that of a captive network in a non-captive environment for Snapdeal. So yeah, looking forward to this discussion and very, very happy to be here.
Super. Thank you, Savat. Shishir, over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Manu. Hi, everyone. So I had e-commerce at Urban Fashion, where my charter is to, make sure that we are maturing with respect to our omnichannel journey, as well as scale our e-commerce P&L, which includes B2C, dropship, which is directly selling in the marketplaces, and as well as while the sales are scaling, we also have to optimize, basically optimize costs, because it's a fast-growing business. And I think there will be a lot of personal takeaways from this discussion, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you, Shishir. So that's the panel. As you can see, they're all leading supply chain experts from their area of work, and they'll have a lot of interesting insights to share with us. And of course, we've kept a good amount of time for questions and answers. So as and when questions come up, please put it in the chat box, and we'll try to answer all, or at least as many of the questions as we can. So my first question right now is going to Bala. So Bala, can you tell us a little bit about the major themes of e-commerce fulfillment centers and sortation centers, their designs and evolution?
Sure. Before I begin, first of all, I'm extremely happy that we are referring these as fulfillment centers, because a decade back, these were called warehouses, and a decade before that, they were called godowns. So that's one of the key evolution that has happened. Coming to e-commerce, e-commerce, as you are all aware, it's one of the industry which is having the fastest growth, which means the facilities need to come up at that particular speed, and the customer expectation is always very high in terms of we need the product as quickly as immediate as I place an order. So some of the themes on which we designed the whole fulfillment center is about what could be the speed that how quickly can I get to the customer, how reliably I can get to the customer. One of the key things is that when I promise that I have to deliver in 2 days, I have to give it in 2 days. If it is 1 day, it has to be 1 day. So reliability is a very important factor, and of course accuracy. And added to that are the other few themes which are more internal, like in terms of scalability. How scalable is the facility which I design, and how compatible is it for the future changes in the categories that we deal with. Example is a decade back, e-commerce was all about books and CDs, and today it's about mobiles and fashion, right? So categories keep changing. How flexible can the fulfillment centers be? And of course, the last lever is the cost. How economically I can reach to the customer. But when we come to the sortation centers, the levers are slightly different. As e-commerce, we are trying to go as deep as possible into the to serve all the customers in the various pin codes. As and when we open few new pin codes, it adds complexity to the network in terms of how can I reach to the customer as quickly as possible. So that's more about again reliability and speed. So the complexities are different, supported by the network strategy, but these are the principal themes on which the fulfillment centers and the sortation centers are largely designed. Sorry, Manu, you're on mute.
Okay, so thank you very much, Bala. I'll now request Ashish to take the stage and tell us a little bit, from an FMCG perspective. So we would win with e-com consumers by providing high level of services, delivery in hours and not in days, as we heard in the previous session, and efficient cost to serve, right? And with a sustainability agenda. As supply chain leaders, how do we strive to maintain the balance for the above three drivers across the ecosystem?
So Manu, very, very important question. And I think all of us who are in any business which has e-commerce, we know that whenever we venture into this business, the first mindset is to make it work, right? And you make it work, you get the scale, you start delivering to your customers and get the right customer experience. And then when the business scales up, then you also start looking at cost. Not that you don't look at the cost in the beginning, but the first and the prime mover in the beginning is how can you make the model work? So like if I talk of FMCG, the sales before pandemic as e-commerce sales as percentage of total sales were 3 to 5%. Now they have moved to 6 to 8%, and surely they'll move to double-digit contribution. And some industries it can be higher, some industries it can be lower. So it's becoming a sizable part of overall business portfolio. And when we look at the cost structure, the cost structures are higher than our other channels of sales. So if I look at how we service modern trade, how we service traditional trade, these are channels which have been there for many, many years. And we have somehow managed and optimized the route to customer and cost to serve over a long period of time. So now it's important for us to optimize the total cost when it comes to starting from receiving the customer order to the delivery, either directly to the customer, to direct to customer model, or through the e-com partners. And what I see is then when the scaling happens, the complexity comes in not only from volumes, but from the portfolio that we want to introduce. So we want to get exclusive SKUs, which we don't sell. We want to launch some SKUs through e-com. We want to get our international range of SKUs. So then this increases a whole amount of complexity in the entire fulfillment process. So this is one thing that we need to keep in mind. And along with it, sustainability agenda, because as you know, the moment you get into micro fulfillment, some sort of packaging, it is adding to the carbon footprint. So what can you do in terms of managing the cost and the sustainability along with the growth is the challenge. So from my perspective, all of us have focused largely on managing growth and cost, but I think the sustainability agenda is coming on the table. So like Bala said, that the design has to be perfect and it has to be futuristic. So I think while designing, we need to also look at the carbon footprint. Are these micro fulfillment centers adding to the carbon footprint, or the whole business is adding to the carbon footprint? Yes or no? And if it is adding, then obviously we need to find solutions and overall cost. So for me, it's a challenge that how do we shift our mindset from growth to cost optimization to sustainability, so that we are committed to our business on all the levers.
Great, thank you, Ashish. That's very interesting perspective. And as supply chain professionals, I think every day we live all structure. So over to you, the infrastructure specialist. I understand there is a bullish outlook for warehousing. So, and especially on the back of e-commerce growth, do you continue to see these trends continuing to the top 8 cities, or this is likely to change?
Hi everyone. So yeah, I think Manu, it's a very pertinent, valid question. Let me just take a step back and kind of give a perspective. So even before the pandemic hit us, I think there were enough reports from analysts suggesting that the internet penetration is actually going to grow at a much higher pace in the next 5 years. So that's about 2020 to 2025 time frame, right? I mean, obviously at the back of the digitization and the data suggested a large amount of data consumption in India has grown multifold in the last few years, which was obviously going to lead to much more digital buying eventually. The pandemic has just hastened that entire process, right? I mean, it's we've all kind of hooked on to the process of buying digitally much faster. And I think that's the beauty of India, that this is not only an urban phenomenon, but also turning into a rural one. I think Ashish and Bharat touched upon the point of servicing more and more pin codes, but we're seeing that trend shifting now. I would like to answer that. The question that you're asking is on two fronts. One is purely on the top 8 cities, and I personally refrain calling it from as tier 1 and tier 2 cities. I call it the top 8 cities, and the next 8 to 10 growth is basis the GDP and the demographics, right? As far as the top 8 cities are concerned, yes, we will continue to see the warehousing sector grow significantly, primarily because of the shifting from grade B and grade C kind of warehouses to more compliant warehouses, as the awareness around the warehousing sector continues to grow. I think Bala mentioned about they being called as fulfillment centers and not as warehouses and godowns. I think that's a significant mindset change that we see now. But the other factor which is going to contribute towards this growth is the China Plus One strategy on the manufacturing sector, right? We are definitely going to see a significant shift of thrust in the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing GDP, which is about 15% of the GDP today, is likely to go to 22% of the GDP by 2025, which means the manufacturing as an industry is going to grow from $500 billion to $1 trillion economy within manufacturing. And that's almost doubling the size in the next 5 years, which means there's going to be a lot of requirement of industrial warehousing, which is going to come in. And that's more likely on the top 8 cities or in and around the top 8 cities. Moving on to the other next 8-10 cities that we're looking at, obviously like Ludhiana and Guwahati and Coimbatore and those kind of cities, definitely the digital buying is going to significantly grow. So as a percentage growth, we will definitely see significant growth, more than 15% CAGR that we're looking at, a report suggests, for the next 5 years. And we will continue to see that happening. The challenge will be on the price factor. But I think as the supply and demand would suggest, that things will eventually fall in place for the next 8 to 10 cities also. So I think all in all, I think both or due to different reasons, we'll continue to see a significant growth in the next 5 years or so.
Great. Thank you, Ane. That was an interesting perspective. Now we'll move quickly to another e-commerce specialist, right? Savarth is going to tell us a little bit, on automation. So the question I have really for Savarth is, generally the business case for automation is turned down due to ROI related concerns with respect to the cost of manually doing the operations. This is particularly true in India. So how do you see investment in automation being justified from your perspective as well as the industry perspective? Over to you, Savarth. I think you're muted, Savarth. You'll have to unmute.
Thanks, Manu. I think the very fact that our evolution is now telling us that we are building fulfillment centers and not warehouses and godowns anymore, kind of tells us that we've come a long way. But yes, in India, because of the availability of cheap labor, automation business cases are always looked at with a doubt. I and Bala would probably know this many a times where we've had this discussion in the past, right, as to how should we justify, and we used to figure out ways and means to justify investment into automation, even at the scale at which Flipkart used to operate, right? So I think back then to now, the shift has changed. I think slowly people have started to realize that it's no longer about manpower. It's actually about the speed at which you're processing, your throughput. That kind of becomes important, right? It's also about the reliability with which you are which is primarily the errors that you make in performing any operation. That is very, very crucial, because now these things are kind of deciding the experience of the customer for you, right? So I think the shift has happened, the thought processes have evolved, and the moment you start looking at things not only from a manpower cost, but actually start looking at it from reliability, speed, and even scale, right? I think volumes are an important aspect for automation to kick in. If you don't have enough volumes, honestly, automation generally doesn't give you the required results that you need, right? But if you're building for scale, like all the gentlemen I've heard are talking about double-digit growths, triple-digit growths in the future, right? So if you're looking for scale, today, if you're setting up a warehouse or a fulfillment center for that scale in the future, you're investing for at least 10 to 15 years. And if you're investing for that long, it's important that we look at what kind of technologies we incorporate into our operations that can help us scale in the same infrastructure for volumes that 3 times or 4 times higher in the future. So, I mean, interesting aspect. It's always a healthy conflict that happens. But at the same time, I truly believe that the moment you start looking out for the future and start building for the future, all of these business cases start looking a lot more better in terms of their ROIs on the investment.
Great. Thank you, Sarvat. So that gives us certainly a good insight on the justification and the ROI, right? So now I'll request Shishir, who represents the apparel industry, to respond to some of the other questions. So Shishir, how are brands grappling with the rise in e-commerce sales, specifically from the fulfillment point of view? Most of the brands have well-equipped B2B warehousing facilities, either owned by themselves or operated by 3PLs. But e-commerce warehousing and fulfillment for e-commerce operations is a completely different game. So what are the best practices? How are things being done by yourself?
Sure, Manu. So, I mean, I think the first thing that everybody will agree that, this from a demand point of view, e-commerce has seen a time travel. And we're not talking about percentage growth, we're talking about X growth. And the growths are 6X, 5X, 10X. And when these kind of growths happen, a lot has to change from a fulfillment point of view. And all that has happened, it all got hastened up in just a matter of a year, or I'll say a couple of months. So when that happens, the maturity is that, people first start with one shared facility within a B2B warehouse. There's a small area demarcated where the B2C orders or the e-commerce orders are being fulfilled, and then they move on to, and with the existing technology, and then they move on to using the existing technology and segregating an e-commerce segregating the e-commerce fulfillment and building a separate warehouse. The third stage is that when people move on to a dedicated e-commerce warehouse, probably running 24 hours, and with a newer technology which is helping them to pick and pack quickly. So I think this journey is massive, and and I'm talking about still, the e-commerce business still not a major part of the mainline business. And when the change of such massive change happens, both from a demand and supply point of view, I think a lot of changes have also happened on how the fulfillment is going to happen. And I think Bala struck the chord by saying that it's no longer, it's actually an evolution from a go down warehouse to a fulfillment center. And this business is all about accuracy. This business is all about speed, and this business is all about cost. And this has to be optimized. So I think the journey is very similar, but I believe there is still a long way to go. And somebody, I'm not talking only about apparel, but talking about any brand which is trying to be D2C or trying to do a drop ship or directly sell on the marketplace. I think this journey is massive, and everybody is still at a very lower stage because the learning curve is extremely steep, and people are just trying to figure out what is best for them. I think there's still a very, very, very long way to go, and we're far behind from what evolved marketplaces. I mean, it could be Flipkart, Snapdeal, on Amazon are doing. It's way, way behind there, but people have to get there for sure. They have to get there. So it's a task. And I think the ecosystem has to evolve accordingly.
Great. Okay, thanks, Shishir. So that's a heads up to 3PL operators and service providers. So that is the expectation of industry. So thank you for your response. So I'll come back to Bala now. So Bala, how are the infra specifications evolving with the current evolution in the design of e-commerce fulfillment centers and sortation centers?
Interesting question, Manu. Before I answer that, I'll just go back 10 years when I was in my consulting days, and when we used to present these kind of infrastructural solutions to customers, they will be extremely happy to see what all European countries used to do, but eventually they'll go back to the manual warehouse because the cost did not justify. And we used to struggle to justify even a conveyor, like Sarvat mentioned, right? We didn't have the scale. But with this growth, suddenly all those technologies have become feasible and relevant in India. That's the most important factor. And hence, when we design a facility, and like what Sarvat mentioned, that we have to have a futuristic outlook, and we have to design for a center probably like 15-20 years, we have to think about what possible technologies can fit in and make the facility compatible. We may not be able to do it today, but probably 5 years down the line, the facility should be compatible with any new things, any new technology that can enable the capability of the fulfillment center. So a future compatibility is extremely important. But as we speak, newer technologies have taken a lead. For example, people are already talking about automated guided vehicles, AMRs, AR, VR in the warehouse space, IoTs, and these are emerging technologies, and they will completely change the way warehouse will look. So no more you'll have those huge racks and conveyors and ASR systems. They'll all will become flexible and agile systems, right? So how do we think through for the future in terms of is the facility going to be compatible with all the future and evolving technologies? Is my process flexible to incorporate all these technology changes? And the customers' needs are also changing. Uh, Today, people are talking about try and buy, which means you send something, they have to try something, and then they'll return it back, right? So the customers' expectations are changing. New verticals are coming into the e-commerce. Pharma was never in the e-commerce, and suddenly in the last 2 years, pharma is becoming big in e-commerce. So all these futuristic outlooks, and of course what Ashish talked about in terms of sustainability, that's a big theme right now. All big companies who are investing in big facilities are talking about how to make the facilities, how to make the warehouses sustainable, not only just the fulfillment centers, even the last mile distribution. So these are the factors which I believe that we need to take care when the infrastructure is evolving in the supply chain, and it's evolving very, very fast.
Right. Thank you, Bala. So now coming to Ashish. Ashish, as you mentioned that the percentage of sales for FMCG has moved up from 3 to 5% pre-COVID levels to about 6 to 8% now, and it is expected to cross 10% in the next few months. Okay, maybe 18 months or 12 to 18 months. So direct to consumer, the DTC model growth in India will evolve rapidly. So how prepared are we for this DTC consumer model in India? And what are a few examples of successful DTC models?
Yeah. So, Manu, I think it's the mindset that we need to change. When we think of DTC, we always think of why would consumers go to a brand.com and buy products or services? Why can't they go to a marketplace and do it? But let me give you some examples. I think some of you would know about Nespresso. Nespresso is a very successful business that Nestle has globally. I think we are present in 80 markets. And the business is more than $5 billion. And the direct-to-consumer part of this business is more than 60%. So it's a very successful direct-to-consumer business for many, many years, and it's been built around that. Now, obviously, there are boutique sales, and there's sales happening through physical stores. So that's one perspective. Now, there are some brands in India like Licious and Mamaearth and all that who have built this business. But I would like to think in a different way. Let's look at Netflix. Now, Netflix is a online streaming solution, right? But for me, it's a direct-to-consumer model. So we need to start thinking that how can we create awareness with our consumers so that they go to these brand.com solutions where they can trust that the quality of goods that they are getting is absolutely safe. Now, in India, the counterfeit business, at least in FMCG that I know, is not very big. It is still 5 to 10%. But there are many countries where the counterfeit business is very, very big, right? And I think in some other product categories other than FMCG, the counterfeit business could be higher. So that's the first assurance that you give to your consumers that, look, you are ordering products which are safe, which are from a quality and trusted brand, and you have access to them. That's one. Second, you can experiment with these consumers because you are all big companies like us. We don't sell to consumers. We go to customers, and we believe that customers are the doorway to consumers and shoppers, right? Then we spend a lot of money in consumer research, and we try to understand what consumers want, how their habits are evolving, how their lifestyle is. So for me, this is a direct opportunity where we can go to consumers and understand what they need and then design some products and solutions to delight them. We can start from a small base. I don't need to have a consumer base of 100 million. I can start even with 100,000 in a region and then experiment. Then I can rapidly develop prototypes and test with them, right? And I can do a lot of AI usage and get the demographics and what they are searching. Now, if there are a certain set of people who are searching for diabetes related products, I can quickly prototype diabetes products which can suit to diabetic people and test market with them, So for me, it's a huge opportunity where we can engage with our consumers, understand what they want, quickly do concept testing and launch our products. And obviously build a database and use that database for future consumer insights and design and deliver our product. So for me, direct to consumers is a huge opportunity for any consumer marketing company to understand what consumers want, what are the trends, and how quickly we can offer good solutions to them. Yes, we need to build a base first. We need to create infrastructure where there's a right portfolio, where there's a compelling need for consumers to come and buy our products and not to go to a marketplace. But once the doors open, it's a huge opportunity. And then there are a lot of other things that you can do with this model in terms of consumer insights and designing a product and service. So this is how I look at, and I believe that in next 2 to 3 years, this opportunity is going to be huge.
Fantastic, great. So I think as consumers, we are all going to have exciting times ahead of us, and so I think it's actually changed the landscape for every industry that we, irrespective of what segment you are in, So this is really exciting times, and I'm glad that it's happening. Even let's say our generation of people are getting exposed to the technologies and the newer technologies, right? So it's fantastic, and I think in our own way we are also evolving, right? So so thanks, Ashish, that was great. So Ane, we have been hearing a lot about sustainability and green buildings and its social economic impact. So despite there being so much awareness, why don't we see much focus from developers on green initiatives?
That's a very, very important and valid question, Manu. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad Ashish mentioned about in his earlier response, he was mentioning about sustainability and the impact of the carbon footprint. Primarily, the fact that we move from a growth phase to a cost-effective phase to a really sustainability phase. And I think it's just, there are very few organizations, I must admit, that who are really focusing on this right now. The green initiatives, if I were to look from a developer point of view, the green initiatives would be split up into, say, about 3 phases. Right? One is the pre-construction, one is during the construction phase, and then obviously the post-construction. The pre and construction phases are basically, what are your the vendor strategies? I mean, are your vendors complying to carbon footprint initiatives or the green initiatives? Your procurement strategies and so on and so forth. And I think there have been enough certifications available in the market to really kind of certify and classify that you are, say, a platinum certified or a gold certified. There are LEED certifications or the IGBC certifications, which are very, very important as a part of their process of moving from where we are to really kind of those green buildings. But I think I would kind of stress more on the post certification or when the post construction phase of the buildings, right? And that's where the thrust and focus should be. So for example, Logos is extremely high on sustainability, right? Logos has been, we made a very suo moto statement in the market that we want to be the market leader in sustainability in the next 5 to 10 years and help in reducing carbon footprint. Now, that's a very, very powerful statement coming in from a developer, where most of our consumption, maximum consumption is going to be in cement and steel and, those kind of products and making that kind of statement. But we do believe that sustainability will always continue to be at the heart of the development strategy. So if I were to give you a few examples in some of the large parks that we are developing, other than the certification mandate that we have, we are going beyond the call of the law, if I may say, of just having a 15% green space. And when I say that green space, we are actually trying to create water bodies within the park. One is purely from the water conservation perspective, but just to help you reduce the temperature of the park or the estate by a few notches, thereby making it a little more sustainable for the people who actually start working there. May not happen today, tomorrow. It may happen, like you said, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line, right? The other most important thing that we are trying to do is to bring in solar energy, right? Now, just to give an example again, in our Luhari Park, we are developing about 3 million square feet of warehousing, which means I have got about 3 million square feet of roof available to really generate solar energy. And that's the kind of mandate that we are putting in, that all our warehouses will have solar roof. It is not only enabling in terms of really creating green energy and reducing the carbon footprint, it also helps you further to bring down the temperature of the box, right? The energy that is dissipating from the roof is something furthermore dipping down when you have a solid roof, the solar panel sitting on the roof. So those are the kind of initiatives that we are trying to drive, right? The third most initiative, again, we are trying to drive is put up a Miyawaki forest in the park. This is, again, like I said, beyond the 15% green mandate that we have from a legal point of view. A Miyawaki forest is basically a self-sustainable forest, which is a local ecosystem that we develop. So we basically put in the kind of flora and fauna which is relevant to that particular demographic. So while you have to kind of nurture it for a year or two, but eventually that forest becomes self-sustainable, and you really don't have to spend a lot of time and money into keeping it alive. But it helps you reduce, again, the temperature. It helps you reduce the dust which is coming, because now you have much more larger green spaces available within the park. So we also have to, we are trying to basically look at it from the point of view of the user or the people who are sitting or operating that particular park and warehouse. When the park is operational and you have 2,000, 3,000 people coming in and out, will that park be a big concrete block? Or will that be some more of something which people enjoy going to as a workspace and kind of, enjoy that and enjoy their lives, because that's something very important. Now, coming to why this is not happening the way it should really happen, there are a couple of reasons. One is obviously the developers, most of the developers kind of do a tick in the box when we say the 15% green space kind of an initiative. But that's largely driven by supply and demand, like I said, and the willingness of the end tenant or the end client to really kind of pay for this. And I think it's kind of both from both sides. As a developer, we find it difficult to really put a value to that commercial impact. So for example, if I have to put up a Miyawaki forest or develop solar, solar energy is still much more quantifiable. But if I have to put up water bodies or forest kind of thing, how do I quantify that value to the tenant in terms of his people benefit? And I think vice versa, also people are not able to kind of put a value to it. So I think that's a real struggle that happens. But more so, I mean, I've seen a lot of companies also give a lot of thrust and focus on the green initiatives and the green buildings when it comes to their own office blocks or their own factories or their factory warehouses. But when it comes to rented facilities, which is what a developer like us would do, then it becomes a little tricky, because then it comes down to that last 25, 50 paisa per square feet cost. And I think we really kind of have to go beyond it to see the value and benefit coming out of it for the people who are using it. There's a very classic way of, I relate this kind of situation to the trucker system, right? In the foreign countries, the truck driver is actually the owner of the truck, and hence he takes care of the truck that he owns, the kind of truck that he wants to buy. Whereas in India, the truck owner and the truck driver are two different people, right? So the truck owner will never care about the kind of trucks that he wants to buy. He just wants to set the asset. Same is very much the case of a warehousing. People who actually take a decision on what kind of a warehouse and where to use it and where to procure it are not the ones using it. So hence, I think that initiative of really focusing on these green initiatives is something which is slightly lacking. But I think we're coming up there. I think we more and more like we've heard all our panelists saying that we move from a go down to warehouse to fulfillment center. I'm sure the day is not too far away where we start really expecting that green initiative and the standardization of these green initiatives also as a part of the larger ecosystem.
Terrific. So that's really nice to get that information from you, Ane, to know that India is actually, coming to world-class warehousing and sustainable practices that are globally accepted. And you're absolutely right that many times the cost is something that people shy away from. That do we really need to pay that extra amount of money for some additional features that the infrastructure has, and then there may be an EDGE certification or a LEED certification. So maybe when we come into the open house and the freewheeling session, we will ask some of our other panelists who use these services, how they'll differentiate. So we'll come to that. But for the moment, I will. So thanks, Ane. I'll hand over the next question to Savarth. So Savarth, how do you see the future of warehousing 5 years from now, based on how the supply and demand is expected to evolve, and how do you see the supply chains themselves evolving?
That's a very interesting question, and given that what we've heard so far, I mean, the pace at which the growth is happening and the way FMCG brands are coming into picture and the way internet penetration is happening. I think Shishir and Ashish, everyone has spoken about it, and I mean the way I'm looking at, I mean, let's look at these two things like supply, right? What's going to happen to supply now? From a supply perspective, all the brands are coming on, right? So I mean, there's a lot of brands.com that are going to start direct to customers and direct to consumer services. What is also happening is on the e-commerce side of the world, a lot of supply is getting created by bringing a lot of small businesses on, right? Now, what basically this is enabling, and has been doing it pretty well from a long time, is it's basically bringing those small entrepreneurs, the mom and pop stores at many of the times, a small guy who has a very small manufacturing establishment online, right? And they're trying to reach across the country. So with FMCGs coming in, the supply probably will consolidate, and it will become a lot more structured. With these small players coming in, the supply will become a lot more scattered, right? So the challenge that we're basically seeing is how do we kind of create warehouses that can actually cater to the needs of the future, where we have consolidated supply points as well as we have a scattered supply base, right? Now, the second important question would be around demand. Now, again, with all the things that are happening on the internet penetration, demand is going to, we are getting into rural India, we're getting into grassroots levels now, and we were struggling to actually see. I mean, today we at Snapdeal service more than 27,000 pin codes, right? Actually, as per India Post system, there are 19,500 pin codes. but we are servicing 27,000 pin codes. Why is that? Right? Because we are actually going down further and dividing further those pin codes into clusters and trying to service that, right? And this is going to only grow in the future, right? I mean, when you're talking about taluks, you're talking about small villages and all of that. The internet penetration, which I think is around 35 to 40% right now, in evolved countries like US and all, it's close to 90%. I'm sure with the geo revolution, even India will be at 90%, right? So with all of that, the demand is pretty scattered across the country. It has to reach to the grassroots level. The supply is, from a FMCG perspective, might be consolidated, but from a e-commerce supplier based perspective, it's pretty scattered. So what will a warehouse do now, right? I think that's the big question. And how will I decide to come up with a warehouse? See, I think the most important thing that we need to understand this entire thing is how will a business be sustainable in the future, right? For a business to be sustainable, it's as simple as that the costs have to make sense, right? In fact, whatever a business spends in fulfillment cost, they always want to optimize for that, because that for them is as low as possible is the better for a business, right? To enhance their margins. And one thing that from a customer perspective we need to understand is for customer, speed will become a commodity in the coming days, right? I was hearing Ashish say that it will be a matter of hours from days, right? Now speed is becoming a commodity. So now if speed is becoming a commodity, the expectation of the customer is that I need everything in 1 day or 2 days by max. And at the same time, what I just explained on the demand and supply side, that things are so scattered, how do you kind of bring everything together? I think the entire ecosystem will evolve into one of the concepts is like multi-echelon network, right? I mean, you have a network which kind of evolves into having these front customer facing warehouses, a forward fulfillment center, which is closer to the customer. And then you have these deep reserves, which are kind of consolidating all the supply from different parts of the country into 4-5 critical locations. And that depends on the network as to how we kind of develop it. So actually warehousing will become very important, because if I need to fulfill anything in 2 days, and if there is supply that is getting created across the country, I need to somewhere consolidate that supply closer to the customer, right? And that will also help me to bring the costs down. So it's very, very important that warehousing kind of evolves from its present avatar into like a multi-tiered network, where you will have like these bigger, deep reserves, and then you will start facing some of those inventories in the forward fulfillment centers for the customers, so that the customers can get goods faster and at a cheaper cost for the business. I also believe that a network effect will come into picture. Like a lot of things have gotten consolidated. I personally believe that a lot of the warehousing is going to get consolidated, because running your own warehouses for every brand is going to be a big deal, right? So if we don't consolidate it, we will not be able to get the economies of scale, right? So it's also very, very important to see how things evolve. But I personally feel a big change and shift in terms of the way people are looking at building their own warehouses for their own customers may also happen in the coming future, because for the costs to make sense and for the ability to service your customer better, it would be important that we are closer to the customer.
Great. That's a very great insight, Savartha, and we all have to sort of look at the future. And so I mean, I think we are setting up expectations around, all the things that you've said. So it's a very informative sort of discussion which all of us have had. So I will now request Shishir to answer my next question. So Shishir, what do brands expect from the supply chain ecosystem to build a sustainable direct-to-consumer business model?
I think a lot of this has been answered, but I'll try to, kind of tie up all the thoughts. So I think the bit here is the requirement is Uberization of warehousing, which means, if I'm a business, if I'm a brand, do I really need to invest into building my own warehouse? Do I have the scale to build automation? And we've heard from biggies, we've heard from Flipkart and Snapdeal that they're now believing that they will be able to derive ROI from automation. So, just imagine these questions, the brand, as a brand, if they have to answer this. So I think that's what is really important, that when a business moves from growth to the profitability path, we do not want to, or any brand or any seller for that matter of fact, would not want to be held up with the thought of, oh my God, what am I going to do for my warehousing or for my fulfillment? So that's why I think this Uberization is really important, that I don't need to buy a car to move from point A to point B. My requirement is that I want to sell 5,000 units or 10,000 units per day to a customer or to a market, let's say Delhi, right? Or let's say Bhubaneswar. For that, I need to be closer to the market, because that drives conversion. That speed is a commodity, everyone mentioned. Speed is a commodity. So need to be closer to the market. For that, a brand really needs to get into the hassle of figuring out that they have to build their own warehouse. So that's why I think, and Sarwar just kind of touched upon on that as well, and emphasized on that as well, that the consolidation is required, but I think the consolidation with right tech, with right capabilities, with right capacities that are scalable, I think that's required. And also, as I said, the biggest part of Uberization is that it has to be on demand, right? There's minimum lock-in, easy exit, easy entry, right? And I think these are the things that are important for any SME. We're talking about mom and pop businesses, as well as I'd say mid-sized businesses also that are just growing or on the path of growth for their DTC or e-commerce. I think that is the solution which ecosystem has to provide, which is get them closer to the technology of Amazon and Flipkart, or the fulfillment capability of Amazon and Flipkart, without doing a capex investment, having a free entry or an easy entry, easy exit, on-demand capacities. I think these would be expectations from anybody. And if you just look at this ecosystem, this is developing. It has started to develop. The only thing is, it has not evolved. So there are players right now also who are doing this. But then again, it is not evolved because they want us to commit capacities. They want us to come. The cost structures are still not viable. And even after spending so much, the efficiency that you want to operate on, or the accuracy or the speed that you want to operate with, I think it's below par right now. So I think that's where the ecosystem, I think when I talk about ecosystem, everybody has to come together. Developer has to come together. The 3PLs have to come together. The technology, players have to come together and build, such masterpieces, and open it up for anybody or any seller who would like to run a successful B2C business. I think that will be a key to growth, because this takes care of the demand as well as the supply, and this takes care of your cost structures as well. And then definitely we will try to fulfill thoughts of Anay, move towards sustainability, and these consolidated warehouses will be only able to think through the next level, that is sustainability. And I think the smaller warehouses will never even be able to think about sustainability, green buildings, having a Miyake forest, or having a water body. So I think that's I think just summing it up, that's probably what is expected or required from the supply chain ecosystem. You're on mute, if you're speaking.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much, Shishir. So I'm just going to pause here for a minute, and although I have some questions for all of you, but I'll come back to them later. We have some questions from the audience. So I think it'll be nice to engage with some of the questions that we have received from the audience. So the first question I'm going to refer to is from Mr. Umapati Punaya to all the panelists. So maybe we can take turns in responding. What is the essential role of e-commerce industry towards sustainability of environment with respect to the reverse logistics of packaged material? So if the question is okay, then who would like to take it? If you want me to repeat the question, I can.
I can answer that. Probably I can take a stab at it and others can follow. The question is valid. Majority of the supply chains do focus on the forward chain and they forget about the reverse chain. And reverse chain is place which is packaging material, particularly plastic, are being used heavily. But as we speak, there is a lot of initiatives that are happening where people are talking about using eco-friendly packaging and reusable packaging material, particularly on the reverse supply chain, to make it even more sustainable.
Great. Anybody else would like to add to that? What Bala has just mentioned. So basically related to the sustainability part on the reverse logistics side.
Yeah. So Manu, what we are doing is, since there are three pledges that Nestle has made. One is to be carbon neutral in value chain by 2050. But we also made a pledge that by 2025 we'll be plastic neutral. And we don't want any of our packaging to be wasted or nothing should end up in litter. So what we are doing is we are changing our packaging from a multi-material structure to a mono material structure. Like if you have Maggi noodles wrapper, if we can design our packaging that if it is a two-ply structure, both the layers are from a single structure. So once you have a monolayer structure in your packaging, then it becomes feasible for it to be recycled and reused. If it is multi-layer with different structure, there is no system which exists in India to delayer it, and it doesn't have any value. Now, if you look at Coke and Pepsi, they have been doing recycling of their glass bottles for many, many years. And now the plastic is also being recycled. So from manufacturer's perspective, we are moving towards monolayer laminate, which is easy to recycle. Now the challenge is collection and then sending it to the converters, either for reuse or using it in some other places like landfill and wherever it can be. So from a manufacturer's perspective, we are changing our packaging of entire portfolio, and by 2025 we want to be plastic neutral. So I think that will help in some form.
Fantastic. So that's a super example, Ashish, that Nestle is setting for many other people in the FMCG space as well as in other industries. And I'm sure that that they will also be sort of keeping in mind this aspect of sustainability to packaging materials. Thank you for that, Ashish. Anybody else has a view or a perspective? Any of our e-commerce friends would like to talk a little bit about it? Because I know we get our e-commerce packages with an inner packing and then an outer packing and then a master packing, and then in the end all of it goes into the trash. So do you want to say something? Samartha, I can see you smiling, please.
I know, and this is a problem that all of us have been trying to solve. It's an acknowledged problem statement, to be honest, and it's our responsibility as responsible corporates to ensure that we kind of reduce this footprint of use of plastics and other. I mean, one of the things that we've done over a period of time is all of our plastics is at least biodegradable, right? I mean, you can at least be sure that you're not using plastics that's going to harm the environment. At the same time, I think this question around reverse is a very, very pertinent question, because reverse is going to be a reality the more and more things move online, right? Today, honestly, when someone goes to a shop and picks up something, there's hardly any reverse logistics that's involved unless you have a damaged product, right? But the moment so these are the perils of going online. Let me be very, very candid in saying that the moment the entire economy starts moving towards online, there's going to be this huge trash that will get generated, which is around rivers, right? And hence, it's important that all of us have started to think about it. I think Bala said what Flipkart is doing, Amazon is doing something similar, Snapdeal is doing something similar. We heard Ashish how the manufacturers are now thinking about it. A lot of e-commerce ready packaging is now becoming a reality. So the multiple layers of packaging that you spoke about, that also is kind of slowly going away, right? I mean, we will basically have the primary packaging, which is good enough for us to ship it to directly to a consumer, right? So even that work is on as of now. And I mean, I think there's a very clear roadmap that people have in front of them in terms of what are the things that they need to do, like e-commerce ready packaging, using of environmental friendly packaging for forward as well as reverse, also ensuring that a lot of reverse logistics can be avoided by actually reusing the reverse material for a forward fulfillment, right? That's also one of the things that's kind of is happening. So a lot of initiatives are kind of in pipeline, and I'm very confident that in the coming couple of years, you would see this piece also being resolved completely by all the people that are responsible for doing it today.
Sure. So just Samad, just back to you before we go to the next question. So let's say again, I'm just asking you from an e-commerce perspective. Do you think in the future we'll see labels like in the cigarette boxes, this is dangerous, etc., etc. So will you, or let's say that some of the e-commerce companies put on it that please recycle this, or this packaging material can be recycled, and this is some disposal instructions. So do we see that
Yes.
with that sort of happening? Just
I mean,
anybody
it's
from
already happening.
e-commerce?
It's already happening.
Okay.
I'm very glad that you asked me this, because this is one thing that we can do right away, to be honest, right? At least provide disposing instructions in terms of how to recycle things or how to dispose things. I think that is already happening. I mean, you'll see a lot of packets that are coming from Flipkart, Amazon, Snapdeal also for that matter, will have these encryptions very clearly written on it as to what do you need to do to dispose these things off, right? I mean, a lot of them have already moved. I mean, all the boxes that you see that are coming, the cardboard boxes and all of that, I mean, have these puzzles and nice riddles written on over it. We basically trying to engage more the users to like use it, like some people are putting snake and ladders on it so that you can play snake and ladder using that box. So I mean, there's a lot of innovation actually happening in that front. And I mean, I'm glad that you asked this question, because this is one thing that we are very, very seriously doing in terms of ensuring that. So it is a reality. It is becoming a reality, and in the coming days, it's going to become even better in terms of the instructions of recycling or disposing of goods as to how it should.
Terrific. Thank you. Bala, you want to add something to it, or should we go on to the next question?
Just add a top up to what Sarvat mentioned. Removing plastic is one part of it. The second is, if you're moving from plastic into biodegradable or papers, then that is also not a sustainable solution. So we have to look for solutions where we actually avoid packaging. Like he talked about how companies are talking about ready to ship kind of a packaging. And the most interesting news is that when we reach manufacturers, they are very happy to incorporate changes into their packaging so that we don't need any more packaging. So that's a good trend that we see, and these things you'll see more and more in the future.
So Bala, just from my understanding, what is the product that you'll ship which doesn't require packaging? What kind of a product?
Say for example, why not even a mobile phone? It's ready to be shipped. It's properly packed. It comes from, it gets imported, right? So if it can come through international supply chain, why can't it go through a domestic supply chain, right? Anything which is packed in cardboard box for the sake of the product safety and security, all those things can be shipped as it is. There is no need to repack those things. The items which might need repacking is something like an apparel which does not have any outer package, so probably need to pack it and dispatch it.
Terrific. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for that. And I hope we answered your question, Mr. Umapati, and you found it interesting, the interesting perspectives from all our panelists. So I'll now move to the next question from Mr. Gopala Krishnan. So his question is, being an SME manufacturing firm for website sale, on what criteria need to select the last mile delivery partner? So I think the question is, what are the criteria that one should apply while selecting a last mile delivery partner? So this question is from Mr. Gopalakrishnan. Anybody would like to take it?
I'll take a stab
Yes.
at it probably.
Sure.
So I think the most important thing that we need to think of from a last mile delivery partner is who is going to deliver your goods more than anyone else, right? I mean, you have the likes of 5 or 6 different key national players available today, and there the biggest question that you need to ask yourself is who's going to deliver my packet safely to the consumer, right? And who is going to also not be a concern for consumer safety, right? Because one of the things that we generally tend to miss is, and it's a very, very important point in last mile services, is we are actually reaching to a consumer's doorstep, or we are actually sometimes entering their house, right? So it's very, very important that the last mile delivery partner that you choose is safe from any kind of misbehavior with a customer, or any kind of unwanted behavior from that perspective. So generally, by the way, if you're an SME and you're using any of the e-commerce platforms to sell your product, by the way, the e-commerce platforms are already doing this for you, right? I mean, they're already kind of putting these filters in place and ensuring that the partner that they choose for their last mile deliveries is the best available person in that geography, right? But at the same time, if you directly want to sell it to the end consumer, I think you have to keep at least these 2 factors very, very clearly in your mind, that number one is who will provide me the right delivery service, and number 2 is will I be actually able to deliver my packet to the end consumer if I send my logistics, if I choose my logistics partner to be anyone that I want to. And these are the 2 very important criteria. Third, obviously, will be cost, but I am not mentioning that because everyone will know that piece for sure.
Sure. Thank you, Sawad. So anybody else would like to, supplement that, or we can go to the next question? I think it's been fairly well addressed. So we've suddenly got a host of questions. So let's move to the next one. So this one is from Mr. Sumit Sinha. Is just a standalone e-commerce P&L or profitable with direct to consumer model, or what would help to make it profitable? So the question is just a direct to home model sustainable in a way from a business sustainable perspective? So what would is required to make it profitable?
You can take that, Manu.
Sure.
Profitable or not profitable, I think that depends on what you're selling, what is the price, what is your price, and what is the cost of fulfillment. So, but in general, I can answer, there are businesses that are profitable right from day one. There are businesses that get profitable after a certain period of time, and then there are businesses which take much longer to be profitable if their fixed costs are way too high to leverage their contribution margin. So that's the view on profitability. And how do you achieve profitability? I think the math is very simple. Your cost, basically in terms of end customer discounts, your cost of fulfillment, and your cost of marketing has to be lower, or has to improve, as time grows, right? So basically, your marketing has to be, or your cost of acquiring a customer has to reduce over a period of time. Your cost of fulfillment, which is delivery, or your cost of warehousing operations, that has to go down. And at the same time, there has to be a certain scale which will help you to break even your fixed costs. So I think that's really the way to look at it. But with respect to levers, 3 levers: scale, your acquisition cost or your marketing cost, reducing your marketing cost. Third thing is reducing your fulfillment cost. I think that's a simple math of looking at the e-commerce P&L.
Thank you. Thanks, Vijay. So I just want to, add a few points from my side, Sumit. So, since we are taking brands cross-border, we are, helping certain brands from India, Singapore, Malaysia, with their entry strategy in UAE, particularly right now. So it is a very promising model because the cost to serve is substantially lower than, let's say, if somebody has to go to a new market and set up an enterprise there and then then look for a market. So I keep having these calls with brands now and then who really want to go cross border, and they are finding it very so profitable is one. Another is establishment of the brand. So there's always a life cycle of a product or a service. So in the initial stages, to acquire a brand presence or brand recall, e-commerce provides great opportunities and at a minimal cost and very limited investment. So basically, what Shishir was saying, the investment is more on, let's say, the marketing side, the software elements rather than the hard infrastructure. So, I think for brands who want to test market a zone or test market a product in a particular zone, I think there can be no better option than a direct to consumer model via an e-commerce channel. But having said that, when we come to the matter of scale, then obviously, most of the companies have to graduate to an omni-channel method. So e-commerce could be one of the channels, and there would be many other channels that could follow from there. So if you're, let's say, an entrepreneur doing a startup, then we are finding a huge number of, startups with new products, and they are all opting for the e-commerce model to initially establish the brand, do the test marketing, like Ashi said. There are so many great learnings from the e-commerce. So my advice, if you ask my personal opinion, especially if you're launching a new brand on a D2C model, I would certainly recommend that you do take up with e-commerce options. And there are so many great e-commerce players in the market in India, some of the bigger ones, some of the smaller ones. And so you have many options. So I would say go ahead and do it if you're starting out. Yeah. So that's from my side. Anybody else would like to say something? Otherwise, I'll just go to the next question. So Mr. Akash has a comment for you, Ane. So great insights on sustainability and green buildings. On the automation, can you share your thoughts on how developers can help 3PLs or customers to align with facilities that are needed to operate automated warehouse, for example, ASRS? Okay. Should developers be involved right from the automation design as one of the key stakeholders?
Very valid question again. I think, thank you, Akash. Look, I think the automation is, I would classify automation from a development perspective into a couple of brackets. One is obviously automation, which is kind of plug and play, where there is a level of automation which you can fit it into or retrofit into an existing box without doing tinkering much with the box as such. The likes of, pick to light, put to light, those kind of automation solutions. But then if you're talking about specifically about ASRS, I think eventually you would have the developer and the design team involved right from day one, because ASRS is a very fine requirement that goes from a development perspective also. The FM2, FM3 flooring kind of requirement, and the tolerance level, which is practically in microns, which is required for an ASRS installation. Your developer has to be sensitive enough to kind of understand what is the warehouse going to be used for. I mean, it would even go to the extent of the compaction process while making the flooring itself has to be robust enough to ensure that there is an automated facility which is going to come up there and not a standalone. So you could have little bumps which you may not normally feel in a normal course of the warehouse operations if you're using a forklift or a VNA. But then when you use an ASRS and you have those rail guided RGVs and those kind of equipment running on it, the microns would make a difference. So to answer the question, the developer will definitely have to be involved right from day one if there is a highly automated facility which is coming up.
Great, thank you, Ane. So Akshay, I just want to give you my lot of perspective on that, because we actually build our own warehouses also, and not only do we build, but we also operate for like I said, e-commerce as well as other industries. So this is a really challenging question, right? Because our facilities are multi-user facilities, right? Unlike, let's say, there's a build-to-suit facility for let's say a Flipkart or let's say an Amazon or somebody. They have a build-to-suit because they know what are the SKUs they're going to handle and how they're going to serve their clients and so on. But when it comes to a 3PL like us, what we do is we design the warehouse from a multi-user, multi-product perspective. But we do keep in mind, so we do various simulations before we actually freeze the design. So we will do a simulation that, okay, assuming this percentage is going to be FMCG goods, this percentage is going to be automotive, this percent is going to be e-commerce, and the material handling system and the material handling equipment that you're going to deploy is all planned before we actually break ground. That's very important, because I've had experience with I've seen certain warehouses where they've built the warehouse and then suddenly they want to put a VNA design like what Ani mentioned, and suddenly we found in certain aisles, in the center of the aisle you have a column. So you have to be quite clear. So a lot of time and energy goes in planning what is the outcome you're expecting, and the entire design of the warehouse, of the specs of the warehouse, are all put down on paper before you actually go and choose whether it should be an ASRS or whether I should use a VNA stock picker, or do I need an articulated forklift, or this much area I need to keep for shelving, or I need a mezzanine and a bin flow system. So all those things you need to think about. So it's a very good question. And, in the interest of time, I'm going to stop here. But if you need more information, please feel free to reach out to me or Ane, and we'll be very happy to give you more insights on that subject. But yes, to answer your question, the builder should get involved, particularly if he's also a builder and operator. But then the challenge is that you have to get the mandate from the user. Now, let's say, I don't know if there'll be a customer, let's say like Nestle, saying that, okay, you build it as per this, and I'll wait 6 months or 9 months for you to build it to my spec, and then I'll use it. So I don't know, maybe we'll ask Ashish in one of the other questions. But so I'm going to pause here, and I hope we answered your question, Akash. And I'll go over now to the next question, which is from Mrs. Swapna Shivapurkar, right? So please suggest what is expected from a warehouse developer during construction of warehouse to maintain a green and sustainable warehouse. So I think, Ane, you would probably like to answer that.
Sure. So yeah, from a, like I said, from a green warehouse, I mean, it's very similar to what I answered the earlier question also. I think you have to look at it from the pre-construction and post-construction point of view. A green warehouse, there are lots of certifications which are available to kind of have a lot of tick in the box, and there are qualified people who would check through the process of procurement, check the process of construction, what kind of carbon reducing elements have been used, or recyclable cement or recyclable steel, how much percentage is going into that entire procurement strategies. So there's a lot of science and theory available to that. I think I mentioned in the earlier question also, the larger question is the post-construction, that how do we ensure that this sustainability is sustained through the lifetime of that warehouse? And I think that's a larger question to be asked. That's more of a question that we all should answer collectively as a community who are using warehouses, right? Because at the end of the day, people who are using a warehouse have to help us more and more with that particular question. So there is a lot of checklist available, really. I mean, I'll be happy to kind of, if you reach out to me, I will be happy to share that checklist with you from a LEED certification or green certification process. But yeah, I mean, I would also focus on the post certification to ensure that the sustainability of those green initiatives is always there through the use of the warehouse.
Correct. Very, very well said, Ani. So, Swapna, I hope that answers your question. And I'll just add to that, there's LEED, then there's EDGE. There are many bodies, international bodies that define what is required to qualify as a green building, or right. And in fact, we are building a very large logistics center here in Gurgaon, and we've just applied for our EDGE certification. So they give very clear requirements, and then we have to upload our drawings and plans, okay, and they will from that stage tell us this is how it's done. So again, if you are going to build a warehouse, or you need some information on that, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to sort of help you out or guide you on that. So I hope that answered your question, Sapna. Now I will move to a question from Mr. Nagendra Avastha. What would be the payback period range of years for a world-class e-commerce fulfillment center in India? How does it compare with developed countries? So, okay, somebody, whoever would like to take that, and then I will try to add from my perspective.
Yeah, it's a very tough question to answer. There is no clear number that we have in mind. It depends on the level of automation that you want to do, and the scale at which you want to operate, and what kind of automation systems that you want to put inside the facility. Whatever I've seen in the Western world, the automation tend to pay back in 10 to 12 years. Very large fulfillment centers with a lot of automation, primarily because their labor cost is extremely high. And I think ours would be like easily another decade more than that. But if you have a forward outlook, and its payback is not just the labor cost, payback is just not the land cost. There are a lot of other qualitative parameters which come in, like reliability, the speed, which have a lot of indirect benefits to the business, and it's not just a calculation that you can put on the paper. So if you do all those things, maybe we'll be in that range, but these are qualitative parameters and software aspects which generally are very difficult to quantify.
Correct. Thanks. So I think, Samarth, you want to say something, so please.
Just want to add to what just Bala said, and what he said earlier, in fact, is very, very important. It's also about the modularity of your design. Probably from day one, if you'll try to automate everything and build a structure that kind of has all the world-class automation in, it might not be something that you can sustain. But if you're designing it in a way where first you have the fundamental basic mechanization, certain level of automation, and then you start building layer by layer on top of it, I think then what it does is it kind of increases the life of your infrastructure, of your fulfillment center. And also what it does is it gives you that flexibility that you can keep the cost equations in balance. And as you scale, you will actually have the right automation to help you out. So it's important to have a very good design team there, is what I would say.
Sure. Absolutely right. I was just going to say that, Samarth. So the design actually of the intra warehouse design will be very dependent on, what kind of customers you intend to have, or you already have, what kind of products you would like to have that you are going to serve, and then what is the throughput for example, you touched upon ASRS, or somebody talked about ASRS. I was having a discussion with one of the world's largest ASRS manufacturers just about a week or 10 days ago. And the viability comes up when you have, let's say, a tall building as something as tall as 20 to 25 meters, because the cost of that ASRS is designed to have a very high throughput for certain specifically defined products. You cannot have a multi-user ASRS system. So it may be great for, let's say, a manufacturing plant who has, let's say, 20 SKUs that they manufacture. And then those SKUs, either the raw material or some raw material and some finished goods are used, are actually managed by the ASRS system. But if you are unclear, what you're going to actually service, so I would not recommend that you go for an ASRS, because then to retrofit a ASRS later is very, very cumbersome and very, very costly. So, so the payback, I'll come back to the payback period. So it all depends on, what equipment you are, opting for, and your entire business plan. Because like we talked about sustainability in the earlier conversations, somebody mentioned that more important than the sustainability of the warehouse or the operations is the sustainability of your business. So if you go and invest, let's say 100 crores in a fully automated facility, and then start looking for customers, you are going to have a big challenge, because you have already designed and established your MHE and automated fulfillment center. But to again fine tune that to a specific customer requirement or a specific product category, it's a very difficult and expensive proposition. As opposed to that, our friends from e-commerce, let's say Snapdeal and Flipkart and Amazon, they already have a science. They know which are the fast-moving goods. They know what percentage of this category moves. So when they build a fulfillment center, they know exactly what they need. So I mean, I'm sure that my friends from e-commerce will be better placed to answer it. But I thought I'll just share that aspect to you, that yes, you can go and set up a fulfillment center that is automated. But unless you know who your customer is going to be, or what his customer's requirement is, what are the product categories, what is the throughput, my advice will be that you please hold on, engage with your customers some more before you plan for a fully automated fulfillment center. So that's it from my side. Anybody want to add some other comments to that, please do. Otherwise, we'll move to the next question. I guess, I think, I hope we have answered. So in terms of, payback, coming back to payback. So the payback in India for highly automated, you have to consider anything from 15 to 20 years. Okay. Because the cost of real estate, and then of course we know the steel prices have gone through the roof. Till last year it was around 36,000 rupees a ton. Today steel is 62,000 rupees a ton, and if you have, let's say, 1,000 tons of steel, your viability of the project gets questioned in terms of the huge increase in cost. So payback, I would say, you need to consider at least 15 years, especially if you're going for internal automation, intra warehouse mechanization, and so on. If you're looking for a pure like a box stuff, I would imagine at least 10 years, because I was privy to some of the reports from some of these like JLL and CBRE a few years ago, and they were saying the ROI is X percentage, and there's a lot of foreign investment coming in to build these boxes. But the fact is that the rentals have not changed much in the last 5 years, but the real estate prices, the cost of construction, the statutory compliance requirements have gone up phenomenally. So the payback, to answer that question, I would say if you're looking at a box, at least 15 years. At today, if you're looking for a good modern warehouse with FM2 flooring, or maybe VDMA flooring, and solar power supply, all those things factor. If you're just looking like a a box kind of thing, which really you don't worry about the quality of construction, that's a different story. But I think today, if we are building a warehouse, we must go the extra mile, build a class warehouse, And because after 10 years, the A class benchmark is going to be very different from A class today. So we must plan for the tomorrow, not for yesterday. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question on the payback, etc. And more questions on that, we can take offline. We have one question from Saurabh. Saurabh, so the question is, Saurabh, with Amazon India planning to come up with a fully automated FCs in India, but with the labor arbitrage that is available in India, from a profitability perspective, how sustainable is that model? So I think, either Bala or Samarth, this is something that you need to respond to.
Let me try,
Yeah, go
Sarvat.
go for it, Bala, go for it.
I don't want to comment on Amazon's model of completely automating their facility, but yes, directionally, every company is trying to automate, primarily for the reasons that we discussed in the earlier questions. And I'm sure they have their own reasons and justifications behind their maths for automating the whole facility. We talked about how automation gives speed, reliability, and also helps you to bring down your variable cost of operation. I'm sure they must have done their maths before they had made a decision on this.
Great.
One point to add
yes, please.
it, I think he's covered everything. It's primarily the reliability and speed at which you're able to perform. And most importantly, the scale at which you perform. So once you have a certain scale, all of these business cases will start looking a lot better because you need to process. See, with a human capital, you will be able to only process X number of shipments in 1 hour. But once you have like an AGV that does sorting for you, that X can multiply to 3X shipments in an hour. And if you have a demand which is of that sort, it will justify. So it's not like that it won't. So I think given the plans that many of the e-commerce companies have for the future, I think it is prudent that they automate.
Great, thank you. He's smiling, so we know what's happening next with Snapdeal and Flipkart. I can see both of them smiling. Yeah, so great. So we have one last question, which I'm going to take. We are a little over time, so John, please permit me. There's one question from Mr. Viraj. So in India, when will we have complete drone delivery for the last mile?
Go for it, Sarvartha.
This is my favorite question. And whenever I go to these campuses like the IIMs and the NITIs, this is like one question that comes to me always. When do you think drones are going to be a reality? It's going to be a reality when we are ready for it. I think it's as simple as that. I think within warehouses and all, it might become a reality much faster. But on a serious note, our infrastructure, our population today is not designed in a way where drones can actually be a reality. See, when we look at India, we look at only the metros. And I think the India is much bigger and much vaster than the metros. And hence the kind of population that we have, I'm sure even my son would like to throw a stone when he sees a drone flying by. So I'm not sure how the others are going to react to it. But I think it's just about we being ready. See, using it is not a challenge, honestly. From a technology perspective, a lot of what should I say? I think changes have happened in the technology. It's feasible now. It can be done. But I think it's just about us being ready for it, more than they being ready for us.
Just to add on, Sarvat, how will you deliver through drone with an address like this? Shankar Mandir ke piche, chauthi number ki gali. So how will you deliver? So just adding up to that, yes, I mean, very, very pertinent. We have to be ready. And as a demography, as an infrastructure, geo tagging, geolocation, I think so that we are ready yet. There could be pilots. I think internationally also there's pilots. A lot has to be developed, a lot has to be tested and tried before it is taken to scale.
I think I like to hear, sorry, so you want to go ahead?
No, just wanted to add to what Shishir said. I think for drones to become a reality, addresses have to be coded, and and for address coding to be a reality in India, I'm slightly skeptical. Even Google Maps also today, if I put a 5-star hotel, I was going to Goa and I put a 5-star hotel address and it took me to the back gate. It didn't take me to the front gate. So that's the accuracy that we have.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah, sorry,
Great.
Ashish, go ahead.
So I understand making it a commercial reality will be a challenge, but I think we can use them, in my view, when there is disaster in terms of managing quick replenishment when there is a cyclone or something. And today we struggle, like whenever there is some epidemic or a disaster, we struggle to reach people because infrastructure is collapsed. That's one. Or if there are flooding where people have been cut out in a certain part of the country because of the flooding, we can reach them. Defense purposes, like I remember sometimes the defense forces ask us to deliver some of our products and we are not able to reach where they've asked us to deliver a product. So we can use drones in areas where we would not think of in normal commercial this thing. So maybe those are the few areas, but obviously the scope is limited, right? So,
Sure. Rightly said, Ashish. In terms of the phasing, I think B2B or a known address would be the phase 1. And that I think would happen pretty soon. DGC is looking at the guidelines. But B2C, like Sarvat said, it's got its own list of challenges. Yeah.
Great. So I think everybody, that was a great question, by the way. So thank you, Viraj, for that question, and thank you all panelists for answering it with so much gusto. So I think it's been a really nice session, and with this, we will going to close our session. So I would first like to thank our panelists. Thank you all for taking out time from these from your hectic schedule to be part of this today and devote so much time to this particular conference and session. So thank you very much. I would also like to thank all the audience, and I hope it was worth your time to stay till the last and actually overstay. We were supposed to close the meeting at 5:15, but the fact that we had so many interesting questions and interesting responses obviously is testament to the fact that it was an interesting session. So I would like to thank all the participants for making this session a positive and a great experience. And on behalf of CII and CII Institute of Logistics, thank you all for participating. And I'd like to also thank all the organizers and all the people behind the scenes who made this this conference possible and successful. So till we meet again at the next conference, I'm going to sign off, and thanks very much. Good night and be safe.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
thank you, Manu, for moderating, and thank you for keeping us engaged and for your insights also. So you always do an excellent job. So my compliments to you again.
Thank you. You're very kind, Ashish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.